All right, everyone, let's get started. Um, Thank you for joining us this morning, and welcome to episode 4 of the SB Connect webcast series, Leading Through Disruption, where we hear from Inland Empire leaders about how to respond when life throws you a curve. Feel free to post any questions you may have in the chat box, and we'll try to get to them as time permits. I want to now welcome our guest, Cinnamon Alvarez, president of A19 Lighting, based right here in Ontario. Cinnamon is an entrepreneur, a life coach, and the author of the best-selling book, Generating Your Own Happiness. As the multi-talented entrepreneur behind the artisanal lighting company A19, Cinnamon uses design skills to create ceramic lighting fixtures that complement modern decor. Additionally, Cinnamon has also founded an art gallery. She has run a fitness franchise. She has coached others to start their own businesses and generate their own happiness. She has also served as president of the Los Angeles founding chapter of NEWH, awarding scholarships while promoting a high standard of achievement in the hospitality design industry. And she also currently serves on the executive committee of the San Bernardino County Workforce Development Board. Her Twitter handle is at A19 Lighting, so please be sure to follow her. And welcome to the webcast, Cinnamon. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you so much.
Well, great. Let's get started with our question. So it was funny. We were chatting a little bit before this, and you said, what crisis should I address, right? Given the few that we've kind of encountered, and it's true. So I think I'm going to leave it up to you as to which one you want to address. But I think as you think about, in light of the current crisis, and we had kind of thought about the COVID crisis that the world is now facing, what has been your organization, A19's biggest challenge? And how has A19 positioned itself to meet that challenge?
Yeah, so I was joking about COVID because I think as an entrepreneur in general, the answer is similar. It's uncertainty is the biggest challenge. It's that unknown. And so we have a heightened uncertainty with COVID. Are we going to be open? Are we going to be closed? Can we continue doing business? What are new regulations? How do I keep my team safe? And so all of those things. I mean, I think that as a business owner, I was positioned, we don't have debt, for example. The financial uncertainty is big, regardless if you're the business owner or if you're the consumer. So some of those basic preparedness type of things, but you can't ever truly be prepared. You have to be able to be on your feet. So this is one case where having a small company, speaking for my lighting company, has been a blessing because we are a small team and we were able to adapt quickly. We had one family. And then the other way that we position ourselves is I'm highly involved. Like that was a great introduction. Thank you. It makes me, you always wonder like, oh, can I live up to my bio? But I think to point out though that involvement, one, it's part of me wanting to give back, but it also helps me stay involved and abreast to information. And so that's how I stay positioned also, is that I'm always learning and getting information, and I'm taking webinars just like everybody else watching this one. You can never be fully prepared.
Great, thank you, Cinnamon. And so
sure.
Cinnamon, as you think about this crisis as well, and you shared some of how you've positioned your company and to kind of face this crisis, what leadership skills have you found to be most important as you lead your team through the challenges that your organization is currently facing?
Yeah, so right away I think of my leadership with my employees, with my team, because they're kind of like my children almost, my obligation. And I think what's important is not just to manage, but to lead by example. So I'm in the trenches, they see me in the trenches, and my role is to inspire and connect with them. So there's extra attention to addressing their concerns. And then the same thing, communication, not just with my employees and my team, but with my customer base. So there's a lot of relationship building, which is basically in business, you learn that all business is a relationship anyway, but even more so in leading in times like this. Is your job as the leader is to lead by example, be connecting, communicating, and inspiring people. One other trick I do with regards to like the last question of the uncertainty is, there's a lot of unknown. So I also, instead of getting overwhelmed by thinking too far out in the future, I really pull back and focus on what's immediate, what's right now, and then what's my next 3-foot toss. And it's the same thing with leading my team. So for example, my employees might be overwhelmed with all the changes going on. So I'll, with them, when I say in the trenches, I'll help them prioritize, because things can get very overwhelming. So we can say, just tell me all the things that are overwhelming and on your list and what to do, and let me help you navigate through some of those things and identify what you can do first, how to solve problems for them.
Great. I think leading through the trenches and helping your team prioritize on just getting through today. And like you said, the next 3-foot toss, I think is great leadership in action through this crisis. So, we've talked about your organization facing the crisis and how they've responded and the leadership skills that you've used. Let's think about your team, right? And what are some new skills that you feel your team has been asked, right, to kind of get through this crisis and respond to this disruption?
Yeah, now more than ever, my team is required to be able to learn quickly and adapt quickly. And it's not only with COVID. Technology pushes us that way also. But so your ability, if we can't just get stuck in a rut and say, this is how we do things, we have to think on our feet. So for example, when people all of a sudden picked up and had to telecommute, they weren't systems that were necessarily in place. People weren't using Zoom like they were today. So there are quick technology changes and adaptations and procedures and compliance and everything. So I think that's the biggest skill required of my team, was to be able to adapt quickly.
That's great. And I think when I read your bio, I think, besides the manufacturing company that you have, you are like your bio stated, that's true, multifaceted, multi-talented. So as you think about these questions regarding leadership and challenges that are being faced, right, feel free to talk through some of your other positions as well, and how you've seen changes in there as well, especially as it pertains to leadership or new skills. And so as you think about some of those other areas that you kind of play in as well, is there anything else you want to kind of talk about in terms of leadership or adaptability as they pertain to those sectors?
Well, I think on a bigger picture, what I'm seeing is people in different places. Some people are very afraid. Some people might be politically charged. People are not necessarily in agreement with how to respond to things that we're being faced with. And so I'm seeing that as a pretty major disruption also. It's not only COVID and the risk of contracting, it's how people think it's appropriate to adapt. So one of the things, in fact, even with the Black Lives Matter movement, is sometimes leadership is in not talking, but listening, right? And helping connect and helping relate people. So I talked about, like, all businesses relationship, but it's also informing those connections and those bonds. Like, where are our values aligned? How can we actually feel like we're on the same page, we're on the same mission, we're being part of the same team? I think sometimes what I see right now is what I coin as the us versus them mentality, where people might tend to get a little defensive, and it can come from all different places, fear, things like that. And so that's where that relatedness, and by able to be listening to what their concerns are, and then you can see that we actually share a lot of our values and a lot of our concerns are the same. And we're able to then, instead of being in opposition with each other, we're able to collaborate and be on the same team. So I think that that's adaptable, regardless if you're in business or personally, and the things that we're facing.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure.
And so Cinnamon, now, as you think about our students, I know you're on the Workforce Development Board as well, and I know you've collaborated with many organizations to think about our future workforce. What lessons would you encourage students to take from this to better prepare them for the future?
That they may not want to hear this, that your learning never ends, right? it's not only knowledge, it's adaptability, changing. We're learning all the time, continuing education. 25, 30 years later as a business owner, I'm learning things all the time. What else for the students? I do think the lesson when we talked about the 3-foot toss, I think that is a really valuable lesson for myself too, is that we get overwhelmed. It doesn't matter what type of position you're in. Sometimes circumstances can be overwhelming. You can never really avoid an unfortunate circumstance. And so it can be overwhelming. Like I remember a birthday party one time, if I have time to tell a little story.
Sure.
It was a woman's 90th birthday party. And she was asked to share wisdom with us now that she had accumulated all of this wisdom in 90 years of her life. And it stood out to me because she said, "Don't worry." And at first I was like, "What do you mean, don't worry?" And she said, "I promise you that if there's ever an appropriate time to worry, you'll know it's the time. But you don't need to proactively worry." So that's what happens is sometimes we're faced with something, a curveball. If you get in a car accident, for example, you're at the scene of the accident, and then you have this heightened sense of like, okay, what am I going to do next? But you don't need to be worried about the unknown future that you don't know if it's going to happen or not. You're wasting energy into that. Instead, and it's a little bit of a mindfulness challenge for yourself to pull yourself back and be thinking of, like one of the things I do is I say, okay, well, what's my desired outcome? So that's my forward future thinking. Like I have a goal to have, $1 million in sales, but that could be very overwhelming because I don't necessarily know how to accomplish that. And so then I pull back and I say, well, okay, that's great. If that's what I want, a man of my dreams, an ocean home, $1 million sales or net, whatever the vision or the dream is that you want, they're all good. But then you come back and you say, well, what can I do right now that can get me one step closer and not be attached to if you actually are succeeding or failing? It's just like, what's that next 3-foot toss I can do right now? Like, and you can kind of tell yourself like, I'm okay. And in a crisis, you can tell yourself, I'm okay right now. So another personal story that I had where this actually was applicable and I could see myself apply it is unfortunately, my home was burglarized a couple of years ago. And I walked in the door, and as soon as I walked into my home, I could tell that someone had been there. And so I knew that I was in a dangerous situation. There could be someone in my house, right? So you respond immediately, and you call 911. But then the next thing I did, once I realized, there was the heartache because I knew I had lost worldly possessions. But the next thing I did is I remember like grounding myself, like I touched myself and I said, I'm okay. I'm here right now. And other than my fear or my anxiety or my perceived value by my possessions being stolen or whatever, I'm the same person right now that I was yesterday. And so then I was able to like really present myself and say, okay, now what's the next thing I'm going to do? I need to call my husband, right? I need to make sure I'm safe. And then I was able to get, what's the very next thing? What's the very next thing? Versus being really afraid of something that's too far out that I don't have any control over. And so it's applicable in business also. It's like you just keep going like, well, what's right now? Like today I met with my team, and I'm sorry I interrupted. I think you were going to say something.
Oh, that's all right.
Like I meet with my team pretty often in the business world as manufacturing. We're making product. So we have a lot to do. But I ask my team all the time, like, well, what's our number one priority? Our customers, right? And what do our customers want? So I also ask a lot of questions because then the answers come up. Well, our customer wants it quickly. What's the oldest one? And then that helps us. Okay, well, this might be busy work. So it's a way to prioritize. I think a lot of people have heard of the prioritization chart of what's urgent, important, what's important, but not urgent. You know what I'm talking about, Shazad, right? And so
I do.
to constantly be asking yourself, but what's important, or where can I add value, or what's the priority right now? What is the customer looking for? That helps alleviate the overwhelm when you can help identify what the priorities are.
Yeah. No, and I think I think alleviating the overwhelming right now, right, is so important. I think as our students are sitting at home and, worried about what's going to happen when fall comes around and what does school look like, and that might even be too far. What about the summer, right? As they kind of go through that, I think some of the advice and the tips and the personal stories about how to deal with the immediacy of stress, and how to use tools that you have to prioritize, is really going to help our students kind of going forward. Cinnamon, as you think about skills, right? I know
Mm-hmm.
you employ folks, and you read through resumes, et cetera, and think about the skills that students need. Do you feel there's one skill or a couple of skills in light of this crisis that you feel students would need to gain in order to find employability, not just in one sector, but given other disruptions that may come around? What might be one or two skills that come to mind?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mentioned the ability to adapt quickly. So it's being able to find information. We're fortunate because a lot of times your boss might not have an answer. So if you have, like, here's a perfect example. You might identify a problem, but you want to be thinking about a possible solution. So if you go to your boss in a workplace setting, you can say, I see this as a problem. Here is 1, 2, or 3 potential solutions that I could offer, right? And we're also fortunate that we live in a world with Google, where we could say, how do I remote into a computer workstation, right? Or all of those things. So I think if you're able to learn quickly and you're able to think about solution-based versus, so like our natural tendency as humans, we have what it's called a negativity bias. It's very easy to identify the problem. It's more difficult to identify a solution or to think of the positive. So just by having a positive attitude and being solution-based is a really great skill to have. And that's not necessarily a hard skill, that's a soft skill, right? I think another really valuable thing, like you were talking about when you're at home, and of course you don't want to be worried about, are we going to school or not going to school, because you might not have a say. But you also want to eventually think of not just yourself, right? In business, we make money because we are offering a product or a service. So right now you can be thinking, how can I be of value? How can I contribute? How can I contribute to my household? How could I contribute to friends that might be struggling with, missing maybe depression or something like that? If you get out of it's kind of funny because we naturally want to protect ourselves, but even just that is a little practice right now of thinking how you can contribute. That's ultimately what business is. Business is this beautiful expression of how you can add value in the world. Right? That's why I look at business as an art of an opportunity to express love. So I'm a touchy-feely person, but that's how you get paid. The more you can contribute, the more money you're going to make.
Yeah, no, I think looking at life from a contribution standpoint, whether that is in your household yourself, or in your community, or in the bigger broad business world, I think that really changes your perspective on how you look at things and how you come to work every day, or how you get involved in tasks every day, and that's really important. Cinnamon, thank you for taking the time this morning and being our guest. I'm trying to see in the chat if we have any questions, but I don't see any. And
While you
so,
look, can I say one more thing?
absolutely, yeah, go for it.
About contribution?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because at first I think that we're taught that we're going to work to earn money, and that we think that by earning a lot of money, then we're going to be happy because we're going to accumulate things. And I think that that's something that our culture teaches us, that we're marketed because people want to make more money. There's nothing wrong with making money, but you're going to be happy in your job if you're contributing. What we're ultimately looking for as you get to my age is we're looking for meaning and purpose, right? And how to give back. And so that's a golden nugget that I can tell you now while you're young, is that don't chase the dollar only. Is you keep, and when you're thinking about being of service and helping other people, nothing else compares to going to bed at night feeling good about yourself. Like you may succeed or you may fail, but if your intentions are really good and kind, then you go to sleep at night peaceful, right? If you're the person that sees an accident on the side of the road and you stop to help them, you're helping them, but you benefit in return, because that's nothing, no amount of money can ever compete with feeling good about being a good person. So I just really wanted to get that out, because I think it's really relevant in the workplace. Is sometimes it might seem like, well, they're asking me to clean the bathroom, but that's helpful. And if you can feel proud that one of my favorite jobs I ever had was being a janitor at the LA County Fair. And I also bring play to life. Like sometimes life is serious. I loved that. I pretended like I was like a flight attendant. I had my, and some people would be like, that's terrible. You had to clean the toilets and people were drinking alcohol. It was awful if that's your perspective. Yeah. But I took it as a game and a challenge. And so I started developing these little systems. How could I get people in and out faster? And I took my broom handle and I piled it up with the toilet paper rolls, and I was doing the little signals. And next thing you know, people put like little $5 bills in my pocket. It was so fun. So you can bring play to your work and just keep thinking like, how can I be of service? And then the money is the icing on the cake. Yeah.
Well, I think if you are doing good, I think money comes as a byproduct sometimes, most times. And so I think that's great advice and some great examples that you shared. I know a lot of our students might be out there, with their either summer jobs or as they look at the fall, but I think taking pride in what you do, no matter what that is, even if that's, being a janitor, at the LA County Fair, like you shared.
Yeah, you never know where that's going to benefit you later. I used to only hire people that had retail experience, like retail or food service. So don't worry about it. Like you're going to learn something from every experience.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Cinnamon, thank you again for taking the time and being our guest today. We truly value and appreciate you being here. And thank you everybody else for joining today. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay tuned for our next webcast. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for doing this, and thanks for having me.